The Nissan R90CK is one of the craziest racing cars in the history of motorsport. It was so powerful that during qualifying for Le Mans in 1990, its engine produced more than 1,000 horsepower, and driver Mark Blundell later admitted that for half of the lap, he felt as if he was about to die. The car exceeded 360 kilometers per hour even after chicanes had been added to the famous Mulsanne Straight, and its qualifying lap is still considered one of the most legendary in Le Mans history. Most interestingly, this Nissan never won the race. It did not even finish on the podium. Despite that, it carved its name into history more deeply than many winning machines. The reason is simple. The R90CK was the embodiment of the most brutal era of Group C racing, a time when manufacturers built cars balancing on the edge of physics, common sense, and driver endurance. Nissan created a machine so extreme that even today its specifications remain astonishing. In qualifying trim, power rose to somewhere between approximately 1,128 and 1,144 horsepower, and a gap of more than 6 seconds over the second fastest car in Le Mans qualifying was something practically unimaginable. That is exactly why the Nissan R90CK is a legend today. Not because it was perfect, but because it was absolutely insane. The story of the R90CK began in the late 1980s, when Nissan became increasingly involved in Group C prototype racing. It was a period of gigantic rivalry between Porsche, Jaguar, Mercedes, Toyota, Mazda, and Nissan itself. Japanese manufacturers wanted to prove to Europe that they could build not only fast road cars, but also machines capable of fighting for victory in the world's most prestigious race, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. At the time, Nissan was simultaneously developing several racing projects. The R89C was created first, later the R90CP, prepared mainly for the Japanese JSPC Championship, and the R90CK, developed for the European racing program. The letters CK referred to the European Group C specification and a construction developed in cooperation with British engineering support. Nissan wanted to create a car capable of fighting against the best Porsche 962C and Jaguar XJR machines. The R90CK was meant to be faster, more aerodynamically aggressive, and more powerful than the brand's previous models. It was also a symbol of Nissan's enormous ambitions. In 1990, the manufacturer entered as many as 7 cars at Le Mans, creating the largest Japanese presence of that era. Together with Toyota and Mazda, the Japanese manufacturers began to pose a real threat to European dominance. Nissan did not just want to finish the race, it wanted to win it and show the world that Japan could build the fastest racing cars on Earth. Technically, the Nissan R90CK was a typical Group C monster. The car was based on a lightweight carbon fiber monocoque and aerodynamic bodywork designed for extreme speeds. By that time, aerodynamics were already highly advanced, but drivers still had to wrestle with cars lacking the electronic safety systems found in modern prototypes today. The R90CK was low, wide, and visually very aggressive. Its enormous rear wing generated the downforce required at speeds exceeding 350 kilometers per hour. The body featured a long nose and a characteristic cockpit pushed toward the front axle. The car weighed around 900 kilograms, which, combined with its enormous power, gave it a power-to-weight ratio comparable to modern hypercars. The suspension was designed specifically for high-speed endurance circuits, while the braking system used advanced carbon brake discs. This was an extremely sophisticated solution for the early 1990s. The problem, however, was that the new chicanes on the Mulsanne Straight required more frequent braking, making it harder to maintain the proper temperature of the carbon brakes. Nissan quickly realized that future technology could simultaneously create new problems. Even so, the R90CK remained one of the most advanced machines of its era. At the heart of the car was the VRH35Z engine, a 3.5-liter twin-turbocharged V8. It was an engine designed exclusively for racing and devoted to one purpose: achieving maximum power. In standard race configuration, it produced around 700 to 800 horsepower. Even that figure was gigantic for the beginning of the 1990s. However, the true legend of the R90CK was born during qualifying for Le Mans in 1990. Nissan prepared a special example intended solely to fight for pole position. The car stood out, among other things, because of its white side mirror. The team used a modified turbo wastegate that was supposed to allow for more aggressive boost settings. The problem came when the wastegates failed and practically stopped regulating pressure altogether. The turbochargers began pumping boost to absurd levels. Power rose to more than 1,000 horsepower. Some sources mention 1,128 horsepower, others 1,144 horsepower. Either way, it was probably the most powerful car ever to appear at Le Mans. Driver Mark Blundell later recalled that the car was practically impossible to control. With every acceleration, it lunged forward like a rocket. The tires lost grip even in higher gears, and the engine temperature was already in the red zone during the warm-up lap. The most legendary moment in the history of the R90CK took place precisely during qualifying at Le Mans. Mark Blundell was then a young driver dreaming of Formula One and a great career. He was given a car prepared specifically to secure pole position. The problem was that the car had not been thoroughly tested in this configuration beforehand. The team had no certainty whether the tires would survive, whether the engine would explode, or whether the car would become completely uncontrollable. Already on the warm-up lap, the engine temperature was alarmingly high. The mechanics instructed Blundell to return immediately to the pits. The driver ignored the order, switched off the radio or removed his earpieces, and continued. The result was unbelievable. The Nissan reached approximately 366 kilometers per hour, despite the presence of the Mulsanne chicanes. Blundell later said that for about half of the lap, he felt as if a massive accident was about to happen. The car accelerated brutally, was unstable, and practically tried to tear itself out of control. Nevertheless, the Briton completed the lap in 3 minutes, 27 seconds, and 20 hundredths of a second. He was more than 6 seconds faster than the nearest Porsche. In Le Mans qualifying, such an advantage was absolutely unheard of. To this day, that lap is considered one of the greatest achievements in the history of the race. Although qualifying was a triumph, the race itself turned out to be a huge disappointment for Nissan. That is the greatest irony in the history of the R90CK. The car, which looked like the ultimate weapon for destroying the competition, could not translate speed into victory. Blundell's car failed to finish after problems and a collision with the Toyota 90CV. Other Nissans also struggled with reliability. Ultimately, the brand's best result was 5th place, achieved by the R90CP, driven by Masahiro Hasemi, Kazuyoshi Hoshino, and Toshio Suzuki. The next Nissan at the finish was only 17th. For the team, it was a painful blow. Nissan showed the world that it could build one of the fastest cars in Le Mans history, but endurance racing requires more than raw power. Reliability, stability, and the ability to run for 24 hours without failure are essential. The R90CK was incredibly fast, but at the same time extremely demanding technically. The engine operated at the very edge of possibility, and the enormous boost levels created gigantic mechanical stresses. Nissan had the potential, but lacked the time and experience to transform it into victory. Despite the disappointing race, the R90CK became one of the most important cars in Japanese motorsport history. Nissan was the first Japanese manufacturer to secure pole position at Le Mans. It was a huge prestige success and proof that Japanese technology could compete with Europe at the highest level. The car also demonstrated the scale of Nissan's engineering sophistication. At the time, the brand was simultaneously developing many racing projects. The R32 Skyline GTR dominated Group A racing. The Primera competed in touring car championships, and Nissan battled in IMSA racing in America. The R90CK, however, was the most extreme project of them all. It represented the peak of the company's capabilities during the turbocharged Group C era. 1 year later, Mazda won Le Mans with the 787B, becoming the first Japanese manufacturer to win overall. Shortly afterward, Group C regulations were changed. Restrictions for naturally aspirated 3.5-liter engines were introduced, effectively ending the era of gigantic power figures and turbocharged monsters. The R90CK therefore remained a symbol of the end of a certain era, a time when manufacturers could build cars with absurd performance and virtually unlimited power. Very few examples of the R90CK were ever built. Most sources state that Nissan constructed 6 chassis of this version for the 1990 World Sports Car Championship season. That makes the car extraordinarily rare today and practically priceless for motorsport collectors. The most famous example remains chassis R90C1, the very car driven by Mark Blundell to that legendary pole position. After its racing career ended, the car went to the Le Mans Museum and was later sold to private owners. The machine continued appearing at historic Group C events and track demonstrations. In 2023, chassis R90C1 was auctioned by RM Sotheby's. It ultimately sold for more than €1 million. This demonstrates the enormous historical importance of the car. For collectors, it is not merely an old racing prototype. It is a piece of Le Mans history, a symbol of one of the most extraordinary qualifying performances in endurance racing history, and one of the most powerful cars ever created. The current value of the Nissan R90CK is very difficult to determine, because cars of this class appear on the market extremely rarely. The Le Mans pole position car sold for approximately €1 million, but in practice, its historical value is even greater. If a car with even more complete documentation or in perfect racing condition were to appear for sale, the price could be significantly higher. In recent years, interest in Japanese collector cars has increased enormously, especially models connected to motorsport. The Skyline GTR, Mazda 787B, and Toyota GT1 have all achieved legendary status today. The R90CK belongs in exactly the same category. It is one of the most important Japanese racing prototypes in history. In addition, the car possesses an incredible story that attracts motorsport fans from all over the world. Blundell's lap has become part of Le Mans folklore. In the collector world, such stories carry enormous significance and are often just as important as sporting success itself. The Nissan R90CK remains a symbol of the craziest era of endurance racing. It was a car from a time when engineers could build machines resembling rockets on wheels, and drivers needed the courage of fighter pilots. More than 1,000 horsepower, speeds exceeding 360 kilometers per hour, and a qualifying lap faster than the competition by 6 seconds sound almost unreal today. And yet, it all truly happened. The R90CK did not win Le Mans, but it won something else: immortality. It became a symbol of a time when racing was more dangerous, more brutal, and more insane than it is today. Even now, many fans consider it one of the most fascinating Group C prototypes ever built, and it is easy to understand why. Nissan created a machine that, for a few minutes during qualifying, looked like the fastest car in the world.